enhance competitiveness, and expand opportunity. In fact, its provisions are designed to offer targeted relief for both businesses and workers, and to support the spirit of enterprise and productivity. Notably, to improve workers' take-home pay, employers will now be required to apply eligible tax relief and exemptions directly when calculating pay as you earn, a significant shift from the current system where such reliefs can only be claimed from Kenya Revenue Authority. Precisely what Atwoli was talking about. I think he read my speech, and that is why he was raising those issues. This will increase efficiency and immediately benefit employees. Additionally, all pensions and gratuity payments for both the public and private sector will now be tax exempt. This reform is a recognition of the service and sacrifice of our senior citizens and workers, and a step towards ensuring that retirement is met with dignity, not stress.
Right. At the same time, the president said the government has made significant progress in addressing the long-standing shortage of teachers by hiring 76,000 in the past 2 years and an additional 20,000 tutors said to be hired in January 2026. He pointed out that this administration has significantly reduced the teacher shortage that stood at 116,000 in 2022. He also pointed out that the government has allocated 1.6 billion Kenya shillings for the capacity building of teachers and another 1 billion Kenya shillings for promotion.
We are closing the teacher shortage gap that existed in 2022 of 116,000. We have recruited over 76,000 teachers in the last 2 years. And we have set aside another 2.4 billion shillings in this year's budget to hire additional teachers, 20,000 of them, with effect from January next year. Further, the government has allocated another 1.6 billion for capacity building for teachers and another 1 billion for the promotion of teachers so that we can have them assist us produce more human capital and more workers with skills and competencies to manage our economy and to run our country. This investment has improved student-teacher ratios, enhanced literacy and numeracy, and generated stable employment in communities across the country.
Now, President William Ruto, however, assured Kenyans of his commitment to taking the country to the next level in terms of development. He said it was time leaders focused on service delivery, noting that elections are 2 years away. Ruto boasted that the Kenya Kwanza administration has lowered the country's inflation from 9.6% to 3.5% this year, with the IMF ranking Kenya's economy at position 6 in Africa. Furthermore, he said Kenya's exchange rate to the dollar has been lowered tremendously.
I must also say that because of the interventions that we have made, inflation has come down from 9.6% to 3.5% this year. Exchange rate has come down from 165 to the dollar to now 129 to the dollar. We have expanded our foreign exchange reserves by 2.4 billion shillings, 240 billion shillings. So we have made progress. And that is the reason why the IMF last week listed Kenya as the 6th largest economy. In 2022, Kenya was the 8th largest economy. In 2.5 years, we have managed to overtake Angola, we have managed to overtake Ethiopia. Now Kenya is the 6th largest economy in Africa. In fact, it is the largest economy in East and Central Africa. And it is because of the Kenyan workers, the collective effort of our farmers, of our workers in industry, of our teachers, and everybody else that has contributed to moving Kenya to where we are today. I am very confident about the future of our country if we work together in the manner in which we are working together.
All right, still on matters Labour Day celebrations, and Court Secretary General Francis Atwoli has sparked a fresh online storm after urging President William Ruto to regulate social media in Kenya, citing China as an example. Speaking during the Labour Day celebrations at Uhuru Gardens, attended by the President and other top leaders, Atwoli said regulating social media would help silence unpatriotic voices and promote national stability. His remarks come at a politically sensitive time as the government faces mounting criticism over its response to the June 25th Gen Z protest against the finance bill. Several youth activists have reportedly been arrested or forcibly disappeared, raising fears of a broader crackdown on dissent.
This one I will talk, and I will talk as a patriotic Kenyan until I go to the grave. I'm appealing to Kenyans, Your Excellency. We must love this country. We have no any other country. If this country went down to dogs, we have no any exit route. Kenyans are watching their television. They should look what is happening in Bukavu, in what is happening in Goma. Pali mtu anatoka na watoto na kondoo, wanafika kwa njia, wana abandon kondoo, anarudi kwa watoto yake na wajafika pahali wanaenda. This is not the route we want to take. But Your Excellency, one day you Kenyans will remember me. If we don't regulate social media, if we don't, in China where you have been, it is regulated, with a population of about 1.4 billion people. In Dubai, it is regulated. In UK, it is regulated. In US, it is regulated. Kenya cannot be free for all. Kenya can't. You see, that is the patriotism that we must follow.
Now, at the same time, Labour Cabinet Secretary Alfred Mutua, on his part, called for an end to sexual harassment and at the workplace, urging managers to foster safe and respectful environments for all employees. Mr. Mutua said his office has received numerous complaints about harassment, warning that the unethical trend must stop. The CS stressed the need to discourage inappropriate conduct and explicitly urged managers to stop engaging in sexual relationships with junior staff.
Workers need to identify the few among them who steal from the employers and try to bring down the same business that are employing them. So we are going to ensure that workers and working conditions are set by the law and that people can go to work and work well. Your Excellency, kuko na shida kidogo. I get a lot of reports in my office about sexual harassment. Sexual harassment in our workplaces. Nataka kuambia Wakenya kwamba mrembo akiandikwa, our sister, our children, our daughters, akiandikwa kazi, usianze kumpangia, unaanza kumnyemelea, na akikukataa unamfuta kazi, unaanza kumharas. We must ensure there is a safe working environment for our young girls and even our young boys. That power dynamics is something that we'll be talking about. A manager should not be dating a junior in the same office because of those power dynamics. Soko ni kubwa Kenya hii, angalia kila mahali. Soko ni kubwa, wachana na wafanyikazi wanaofanya kazi na wewe. And we will not continue with this habit, and we will take measures to ensure there is no sexual harassment in our workplaces.
Now, away from that, police and security organs now say the fatal shooting of Kasipul Member of Parliament Charles Ongondowere by a gunman on board a motorcycle in Nairobi appeared to be targeted and premeditated. Now, the slain MP was fatally shot on Wednesday evening at about 7:30 p.m., minutes after leaving Parliament, with detectives indicating that about 6 rounds of recovered from from the scene, even as the area was earlier on Thursday condoned, of the detectives investigating the murder. Family members and villagers gathered in his rural home to mourn their loss.
I say categorically that Were was killed. And the killers, let us not mince words, the killers are known. Yes. They are known because Were has been complaining. Were has recorded statement from DC headquarters. Were has recorded statement up for DCI upper. No assistance had been, he has not been assisted. Were was killed because of politics of Kasipul. Because of politics of county chairmanship. It's true. That only two things. Because of leadership, some of the aspirants wanted to eliminate him for him to get this seat.
He focused on changing the lives of our destitute children. And you can see in our schools today, parents don't struggle to raise fees. They don't struggle to raise funds when it comes to construction of our schools. He has supported many of our children to go to school. He has ensured that our schools are well equipped and our children are transiting from one level to the other. He has opened roads through the support of the national government CDF funds.
Charles Ngondowere, a resident of this place, is a very humble man, is development conscious, and is one person who has got a ear to listen to everybody. So he's one person that we've really missed, and we shall miss him forever.
Mheshimiwa alikuwa mtu wa mpole kabisa. Kuna wengine walikuwa wanajiwekelea sijui yeye ni arrogant. But see, he was the best person, the best MP we have ever had in Kasipul. Hata ukikuja hapa kwake anaangalia tu, anaongea tu na watu pale. Gate iko wazi na ile ingine pia iko wazi.
Former Budget and Appropriations Committee Chairperson and Kiharu Constituency Member of Parliament Ndindi Nyoro continues to sound the alarm over the public debt burden in Kenya, saying the country is in no position to borrow again as it is at the crisis level. Nyoro says in the Finance Bill 2025, Kenya is expected to pay off 1 trillion Kenya shillings in debt interest without seeing off the total debt. Nyoro wants borrowing more would equate the Kenya digging its own hole, putting the country in a abyss of financial mismanagement. The lawmakers saying in the past 2 years, Kenya Kwanza administration had borrowed a total of 2.5 trillion Kenya shillings.
We are able to communicate things very clearly. The public debt in Kenya, na nimekuwa nikisema hii mara mingi, is in a level of a crisis. And we can go out there and become defensive. But the reality is on the ground. That out of the budget now, ambayo itapitishwa mwezi wa 6, over 1.1 trillion Kenya shillings inaenda kulipa riba ama interest rates ya madeni. Interest rates peke yake. Lakini tukiangalia pia ile madeni tunatarajia kukopa hii mwaka ambayo inakuja ya kiserikali ni karibu bilioni 900. 900 billion shillings ambayo tunataka kukopa. We cannot continue digging the hole, but in our utterances we appear like we are doing proper debt management. Proper debt management is our realization that continuance of digging the hole is not helping the country. It is putting our country into an abyss of financial mismanagement. Na ukiangalia mwaka ambayo ni ya 2022 ikienda kuisha, ile mwaka ya uchaguzi, the debt in Kenya was around 8.7 trillion Kenya shillings. Currently it is around over 11 trillion Kenya shillings, meaning over a period of 2 years, we have borrowed close to 2.5 trillion Kenya shillings. The entire reign of President Mwai Kibaki, miaka yake yote 10, alipata deni ya nchi ikiwa 600 billion, akiacha ikiwa around 1.7 to 1.8 trillion Kenya shillings.
Now, presidential aspirant Dr. Fred Matiang'i is set to begin his tour of Nyamira County as he prepares to declare his presidential bid. He is set to tour an extensive part of his home county after 2.5 years hiatus from the national scene. Matiang'i, largely known for his cabinet roles, will be gunning for his first elective seat if he is not, if he is to fly the flag of Jubilee Party backed by former President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Siku ya kesho Ijumaa tarehe 2, presidential candidate wetu anaitwa Fred Matiang'i anatembelea mahali alizaliwa, mahali inaitwa Gusii. Safari yake itaanzia Nyansiongo saa 3 asubuhi, ielekee Keroka, ikitoka Keroka isimame Keumbu. Mkutano mkubwa ikuwe Kisii County hapo roundabout ya capital. Akimaliza hapo aelekea Nyamira, asimame Kimera, aongee na watu yake. Akitoka hapo ataongea na watu Nyamira town. Akitoka Nyamira town atasimama Kerenyo, ahutubie wananchi. Mwishowe ataenda Ikonge market, ahutubie wananchi. Na kama saa itaruhusu atamalizia Chebirati. Matiang'i ni mtu ya amani, anataka kujitokeza urais wa Kenya mwaka wa 27. Lakini kabla hajatangaza lazima apate maoni kutoka nyumbani, atembelee wengine nao apate maoni ya kutosha, sababu wewe simama useme watu wamekuambia kabla uchaongea nao. Tunaomba watu wajitokeze kumsalimia.
Now, the Ulwa clan, who lost a family of 9 in a suspected arson incident in Sigomere, Ugunja sub-county, is appealing for help from the government and well wishes to enable them to bury their deceased persons. According to the community, all is not well and they have been forced to push forward the burial date because of lack of money to purchase coffins and other expenses. Last Tuesday night, 9 family members died when suspected arsonists set their house on fire at Upanda village in Sigamore ward, Ugunja. Now, police have since arrested the man and his wife as investigations into the matter continue.
Mpaka wakati huu tulikuwa tumepanga kwamba tunaweza kuwazika tarehe 2, lakini tunapata uzito kwa upande wa fedha. Hatuna pesa kutoka mahali. Ukiangalia hii boma pia nyumba ilichomeka ikanguka chini. Sasa kwa wakati huu chenye tunayo kwa mkono hatuna. Ndiposa tumekuja kwamba tulikuwa tumepanga kuzika tarehe 2, tukahayarisha kwamba iwe tarehe 9. Sasa wakati huu hatuna chochote kwa mikononi mwetu. Bajeti yetu ni 2.5 million. Kwa wakati huu hatuna hata shilingi 10 hatujapata.
County government ilikuwa hapa na walituahidi kwamba tutengeneze budget wapatie. Mlisikia ndugu Okoth Okoyo akisema kwamba bajeti yetu ilikuwa 2.5 milioni. Hiyo 2.5 milioni ni pamoja na kurepair hii nyumba mnaona hapo nyuma ndugu yangu alianza kujenga na hajamaliza. Na tulikuwa tunaomba kwamba kama inawezekana hata shelter kidogo tupate hapo mbele, ili hatuwezi kuzika kwa msituni. Kulingana na Kimira lazima tukue na kitu kama kanyumba hivi wakati tunataka kuzika. Na hiyo zaidi tulikuwa tunaomba hiyo nyumba ndugu yangu alianza tukamilishe, ili watoto wale wamebaki hapo wawili ambao hii kisa ilitokea kama wako nje wapate shelter, itawasaidia baadaye.
Naitwa Robert Odongo, naibu wa chifu kata ndogo ya Sigomre. Penye tuko hapa panaitwa Upanda village, ni moja ya zile villages ziko Sigomre sublocation. Kwa hivyo kwa wakaaji, mimi nawahakikishia jambo moja tu. Serikali inafanya njia zozote zile za kuhakikisha wale waliofanya kitendo hichi kibaya wameshikwa na wakaweza kuwekwa sheria ikafuata mkondo wake. Hata saizi kwa wenye tunaendelea saizi, mengi yanaendelea kufanyika ambaye tuwezi speculate sahi. Ofisi wa DCI na apparatus zote za serikali zinafanya kila lolote kuwezesha wenye walifanya kitendo hichi waweze wakashikwa na wakastakiwa na sheria ikafuata mkono wake.
Now, Siaya County Governor James Orengo has said that the 2027 general elections may not be free and fair unless Kenyans demand respect to the country's key institutions. According to Orengo, the country's institutions are on trial, and it's upon Kenyans to jealously guard them from the threats by leaders bent on rendering them irrelevant. Orengo says he will not shy away from pointing out mistakes in the country, saying that as a champion of democracy, he was ready to face the consequences of speaking the truth.
I am prepared to go back to jail. I'm prepared to go back on the streets. This is not a country to be proud about. This is a country where now the young people, the Gen Zs, you have to come out and we are prepared to join you. In Kenya, our institutions are under trial. There's no single institution that is not under trial in Kenya. If you go to the Supreme Court, there are a lot of questions that are being raised about the principal judicial organ, the supreme organ in the country called Kenya. There are questions. On the issue of the Constitution, and here I'm with Raila Amolo Odinga, devolution is under threat, and until we are prepared to fight for the Constitution and not for the little things we are given, unless we are prepared to fight for what is in the Constitution for us as a matter of right, Kenya is going to lose direction. I am asking the Kenyan people that we should be like other democracies where people fight for their rights and what belongs to them. That is how we can take Kenya forward. Not by this silly politics we are being engaged in. Now, even in the political field now, 60 years, Kenya is a republic. And the only strategy we can think about winning elections at the national level is to form ethnic coalitions, tribal coalitions. Tribal coalitions, that is not going to help.
All right, it is exactly 37 minutes past the top of the hour. That's why to take a short breather here on The Drift. We'll be back in just a bit. All right, welcome back. Just in case you're joining us, you're watching The Drift. My name is Martin Mashere. It is the the second day of May 2025. I'm having the Star newspaper, the Daily newspaper, and the Standard newspaper. Just trying to take a look on what's making headlines on the dailies today. Let's start with what's making headlines on the Star newspaper dated today. And top story on the Star newspaper says, who pulled the trigger on MP Were? Now, that particular story is on page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper. The Star newspaper continues to say, the humid Nairobi air hung heavy as Charles Ongondo Kasipul, Member of Parliament, slipped from Parliament's imposing gates after about 6 p.m. on Wednesday. Now from Parliament, he passed through a popular joint along Jakaya Kikwete Road. Now the seasoned politician, he felt a prickle on unease, a premonition clinging to him like the city's dust. He ditched the familiar comfort of his usual ride, opting for the anonymity of a Toyota Camry. Now, Valley Road stretched ahead the familiar route to Langata, unseen. However, shadows followed. Silent, deadly unfolding in the city's underbelly. Now, the city's mortuary, or rather the city mortuary roundabout, became their final stage, trapped in a snarling traffic jam and Camry idled beneath the dying sun. Then, a flash of moments, a motorbike glistening through the congestion like a vapor. A pillion passenger stepped out and leveled a weapon with chilling precision. Now, the first shot shattered the window pane, coming to a shock of the MP who was busy on his phone. Now, the bullet hit his hand before the gunman opened more fire. Now, in the meantime, the bodyguard in the back seat panicked, and the driver also could not move in the gridlock. The staccato bark of the gunfire shattered the evening routine, leaving behind the table of chaos and a politician silenced forever. His political career ending not in the halls of power, but in the heart of the city's relentless pulse. Now, Kasipul Member of Parliament, George Ongondo Were, was traveling in a Toyota Crown, and the picture is right there on the Star newspaper front page. It shows a car of Kasipul Member of Parliament Were was using when he was shot by gunmen on a motorcycle near City Mortuary in Nairobi. Of course, it is a white Toyota Crown. Of course, may he rest in peace as the authorities continues to probe into the murder case. Moving on, the Star newspaper says tough decisions pulled us out of an economic crisis, Ruto says. Now, President William Ruto, there's a picture there of President William Ruto and Kotu Secretary General Francis Atwoli at Uhuru Gardens yesterday in Nairobi. Now, President William Ruto has said that his tough decisions have steered the country out of economic turmoil. He also took aim at the opposition, accusing them of scheming his downfall and urged them to hold off, saying that it was a waste of time and energy. Of course, that particular story, you can get it on page 8. Of course, we had taken a look at that particular story in our bulletin this particular morning. Moving on, why the cost of medicine, sugar, and milk is likely to go up. Now, President William Ruto administration has presented a draft of Finance Bill 2025, which walks a tightrope between offering tax relief to ordinary Kenyans while simultaneously introducing measures likely to increase cost of critical sectors. The proposed law focuses largely on efficient tax administration rather than introducing new taxes. Now, that says that taxes that are already in place are going to be higher rather than introducing more taxes. Now, let's take a look on that particular story on page 2 of the Star newspaper. It continues to say President William Ruto's administration has presented a draft of Finance Bill 2025, of course, to the Parliament. Now, the proposed law focuses largely on efficient tax administration rather than introducing new taxes to fund the budget for the financial year starting July 1st. Now, the move is widely seen as the state's initiative to curb public opposition to its revenue-rising measures akin of the Finance Bill 2024. Now, which was the Finance Bill which was rejected in its entirety following bloody protest that claimed lives of tens of people and destroyed property. Now, the bill appears to spare the general population from direct tax hikes, but higher prices loom in changes of VAT classifications for essential goods and services, a move that experts warn will see manufacturers pass the cost to consumers, pushing up the overall cost of living. Now, the Treasury wants MPs to reclassify crucial products from VAT zero-rated to VAT-exempt tax status. Now, on the surface, both zero-rated to exempt goods reach consumers without VAT charges, but the difference is how the business handle input taxes along the production chain. Now, when the products are zero-rated, manufacturers claim refunds for VAT paid on the raw materials, effectively reducing their production cost. Now, the shift to exempt status means business can no longer recover these input taxes and eventually pass the additional cost of consumers through higher prices. Among the affected items are pharmaceutical manufacturing inputs, sugarcane transportation, electric bicycles, solar and lithium batteries, and animal feed ingredients. This is likely to see the cost of common commodities like such as sugar, milk, medicine, mobile phones, electric bicycles, solar equipments, and lithium batteries to go up as manufacturers pass the bill to consumers. Now, the president has decried the rampant abuse of VAT refunds in the recent past. Last November, he disclosed that Kenya spent 400 billion Kenya shillings annually on tax refunds and called for stricter anti-refunds and called for stricter anti-evasion measures. Now, the president gave a colorful analogy of about bakeries employing more accountants than bakers. Now, while leading Labor Day celebrations yesterday, the president said the finance bill is aimed to ensuring efficiency, sealing loopholes while ensuring there are no new taxes. Now, the president finally has been keen on fixing the tax refunds menace, citing cases of handful of companies claiming billions. Now, the president said yesterday, and I quote, that in provisions are designed to offer targeted relief to both businesses and workers and a support for the spirit of enterprise and productivity. I don't know what's your take on that. Rather than introducing more taxes, giving more taxes on the products that are already in place, and these are the star says these are basic commodities like sugar, milk, mobile phones, medicine. I don't know what's your take on that. Start engaging us on our socials at EBN TV. I'll be taking a look on some of your feedback. Now, let's take a look on what's making headlines on matters politics in the Star newspaper. And 12 years down the line in devolution, a pain or a gain. That's a feature story highlighted in the Star newspaper. You can take a look at it on page 2 and 3 of the Star newspaper dated today, the 2nd day of May 2025. Now, let's take a look on what's making headlines on the Daily Nation. Top story on the Daily Nation is storm around slain MP. There is a picture there of Kasipul Member of Parliament, that is George Ongondo Were, the late. Now, Kasipul Charles Ongondo Were left Parliament shortly after 7 p.m. on Wednesday. Minutes later, his car pulled up at a red traffic light on Ngong Road where an assailant shot him and he was dead by 7:30 p.m. Now, his death has sparked controversy amid claims linking him to bloody attacks in the constituency, but his family defended him, terming the accusation he had blood on his hand, part of a cover-up for his murder. Of course, that's a story. You can take a look at it on page 2 and 3. In that particular story, we had took a look at it on our program broadcast bulletin this particular morning. Now, the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, that is the DCI officers, yesterday revisited the scene of the Kasipul Member of Parliament Ongondo Were shooting on Wednesday night. Now, the MP was killed 4 days after an attempt on his life. A Member of Parliament for MCA of that is the Member of County Assembly, I beg your pardon, from his constituency. Now, detectives from the DCI Homicide Unit also began retrieving CCTV footage from the building near the Nairobi Funeral Home area and the traffic cameras nearby the roundabout. Now, the detectives led by Homicide Director Martin Nyuguto were at a Nairobi Funeral Home roundabout searching for evidence and clues that could help unravel the mob-style execution of the lawmaker. Were was shot dead by gun-wielding assailant on a motorcycle on his car, pulled up on red light traffic stop at Ngong Road, 7:30 a.m. minutes after he had left the Parliament. Right. Now, his family says at around 6:18 June 2019, 2 men allied to Kasipul Charles Ongondo Were, who was shot dead on Wednesday night in Nairobi. Now, the family says the victim, Kenneth Njabuya, had criticized the MP. CCTV footage showed the legislator moved to a stabbing, occurred. Now, Njabuya survived thanks to the swift intervention by hotel staff. It wasn't the first time violence surrounded the MP. On May 2nd, the family said, the May 2nd of 2024, Evans Okoda, a former bodyguard to ex-Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero, was murdered in Oyugi's police-linked Ken Kennedy Ogola Osano, a driver attached to the NGCDF office, and Were to the killing through call data. The murder sparked outrage, with the local accusing the MP's inner circle of orchestrating attacks on dissenters. Now, police denied any formal complaints had ever been filed against the MP, despite circulating videos and viral photos showing the victims of machete and knife attacks allegedly linked to him. Now, the videos also emerged showing Were claiming that some people were out to harm him, calling on security agencies to take action. Of course, that's a story we took a look at yesterday during the 1 p.m. bulletin. Of course, the Kasipul Member of Parliament, George Ongondo Were, or rather Charles, I beg your pardon, Charles Ongondo Were, saying that his life is in danger. That was 2 months ago. Then 2 days ago, he was murdered. Right? May he continue resting in peace. Moving on, the finance bill, farm produce drugs hit with 16 pieces VAT. Now, healthcare providers and farmers are among losers should a fresh proposal by the National Treasury to introduce 16% value-added tax be passed. Of course, that's a story we took a look on the Star newspaper dated today. Matters education, and Nyakango fights back in school bursary row with county chiefs now facing sanctions for allegedly defying orders on county bursary funds. Control of budget, Margaret Nyakango returns to court. Of course, that's a story, you can get it on page 12 of the Daily Nation dated today. Matters crime shot 13 times in front of his family and lived to tell a horror story. Now, Charles Kamau had just arrived at his home in Ruiru when an armed gang struck, determined to protect his family. He confronted the thugs and hell broke loose. Let's take a look at the particular story on page 8 of the Daily Nation. It continues to say, as soon as the gate was opened, Mr. Kamau says he drove in slowly towards the parking, and his wife, Margaret Wamboi, and their firstborn daughter, Lynn Wanjiko, stayed behind the closed gate as they always do. Then suddenly they heard the wife scream. Now, alarmed, he jumped out the car. When they encountered changed his life forever. The young men are barely out his boyhood, had forced their way into the compound, overpowering his wife and his 25-year-old daughter. Now, they ordered them to lie on the ground. Now, the attacker that Mr. Kamau had grabbed pulled out a gun and began firing 13 bullets in total. Now, most of the bullets struck Mr. Kamau abdomen, tearing his colon. Other hit his shoulder and thigh. Mr. Kamau collapsed in excruciating pain. The attacker then turned the gun on his daughter, who was shot in the thigh. Now, his wife immediately started making phone calls for help. Now, that was in November 2015, a date Mr. Kamau says he will never forget. Now, that police story, you can get it on page 8 of the Daily Nation. I don't know, this is what people say in their vows when they're getting married, that till death do them part. Of course, I don't know what's your take on that. I don't know whether you can take a bullet for your spouse. Right, moving on. Ruto's relief as pensioners, teachers, and workers and other workers. Of course, that's a story on Mother's Labor Day. And President William Ruto has pledged law change to exempt pensions and gratuity payments for retirees from tax increase. The payout of for citizens, the tax exemption is contained in a draft Finance Bill 2025, which is said seeks to spur productivity, expand opportunities, and offer relief to businesses. Now, the head of state also announced recruitment of another 20,000 intern teachers next year and pay-as-you-earn reforms to boost to boost the take-home of employees. Now, Kenya will also ratify International Labor Organization conventions on the rights of the domestic workers and curbing harassment in the workspace. Of course, was orchestrated in the Labor Day celebrations yesterday. You can get it on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation newspaper dated today, the 2nd day of May 2025. Now let's take a look on what's making headlines on the Standard newspaper today. Now, top story on the Standard newspaper says, a fed-up nation. All right? And the Standard newspaper says, as message of condolence poured in following the death of Kasipul Member of Parliament Ongondo Were, a wave of public anger toward the political class began to surface. Now, many Kenyans responded with scorn of tributes from fellow politicians, and some even offered prayers of gratitude for Were's passing, given the depth of public frustrations, disillusionment, and resentment. It is a time for the political class to engage in serious and honest self-reflection. Of course, that story on page 6 of the Standard newspaper, it continues to say, if you continue at this rate, 1 MP per month, by 2027, Kenya will be corruption-free. That's a comment in the X spaces of the Standard newspaper. Another comment on the X spaces of the Standard newspaper, which is highlighted there at the corner, the corner space of the Standard newspaper, of the front page, of course, continues to say, we also mourn the demise of 5 people who were killed in Angata Barikoi. Right? Kenyans also expressed their anger, saying, let's sympathize and move on. Gen Z used to abduct themselves. I think Honorable Odonko shot himself too. That's a comment in expresses of the Standard newspaper. Moving on, another comment in the Standard newspaper, and I quote, I have read several stories about this guy, and I can say he was an henchman. His death was planned for long. We don't need to mourn when the people of Kasipul and Homa Bay are celebrating. Now we sympathize and move on. Now another comment, and I quote, a child was shot 7 times in Rongai, and someone asked, but he is alive. Another one said people are abducting themselves. A day after BBC report, one MP said people die every day. They sympathize and move on. They are thinking they are exceptional to death. Right? Of course, those were the words of Mandera North Member of Parliament, that is Bashir Abdullahi, who said that people die every day and sympathize and move on. Of course, those are some of the comments on the X spaces of the Standard newspaper dated today. Of course, let's take a look on what a political commentator, Arnold Maliba, said on June 25th of 2024. And I quote, he said, Kenya changed forever. A majority of politicians think the country can walk back. It's not happening. Politicians must embrace the fact that they serve at the pleasure of the voters. Of course, this assassination of Kasipul Member of Parliament George Ongondo Were has sparked contentious debate on the social media spaces. I don't know what's your take on that. Do tell us on our comment sections on our pages at EBN TV across all social media platforms. Of course, there is a picture there of the slain Kasipul Member of Parliament, and this car is Toyota Crown white car is also there. Let's take a look on this particular story on page 6 of the Standard newspaper dated today. Now, it was not isolated opinion. Dozens of Kenyans joined in echoing the sentiments of the political elite had long ceased to represent the people. Now, the backlash coming just days, or rather just weeks after Kenya's cold response to the death of Dagoretti North Member of Parliament, that is Beatrice Elach's son, reflects on a growing chasm between the public and leaders. In his condolence message, President William Ruto instructed the police to conduct a thorough investigation into the MP's death. Now, in life, Ongondo was mired in a controversy facing more than 20 allegations, including violence and intimidation. His death have made shocked Parliament, but not the public. Now, the disillusionment has been brewing for years, but reached a boiling point in June 2024 when Parliament passed the controversial finance bill 2024, triggering historic protest and the unprecedented breach of the House by angry demonstrators. Even after the protest, President William Ruto's administration appeared more focused on damage control than reform. Now, Arnold Maliba, leader of the Progress Plus Alliance, that is the PPA party, said that on 25th June 2024, Kenya changed forever. According to him, it was a watershed moment and only politicians remain hangover from the past. A critical mass of citizens now demands leaders to reflect on the spirit of constitution. Now, any attempts to revert the KANU era type of politician are being firmly rejected. Although President William Ruto declined to sign the finance bill, the move was largely seen as political strategy rather than a sincere response to public outcry. Now, according to Mzalendo Trust 2024 Parliamentary Scoreboard, 19 MPs, including high-profile ones such as Kapsaret's Oscar Sudi and Madaraka's George Aladwa, did not utter a single word in Parliament over the past year. Now, UDA, President William Ruto's party, accounted for 10 of these silent MPs, while ODM had 4. Meanwhile, Parliament adjourned 66 times due to the lack of quorum, 40 of those in the National Assembly. Now, the report also revealed that public participation in legislation is increasingly treated as a mere formality. Bills with far-reaching consequences such as basic education, bills and affordable housing were rushed through with only a few days allocated for public input. During the elections campaign, Kenyan politicians promised roads, jobs, waters, and dignity, but once in office, many pivot towards personal enrichment and loyalty to the president and party leaders. Now, allegations that MPs were bribed with 2 million shillings each to support the 2024 finance bill only added fuel to public anger. Judge a member of parliament, that is George Koimbori, claimed that the payments were made in cash. Now, National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula dismissed the allegations, saying as dangerous and are dangerous and baseless, but the damage was already done. Meanwhile, media reports suggested that MPs take as little as 10,000 Kenya shillings in those reports or vote for bills. Mandera North Member of Parliament Bashir Abdullahi recent comments about the killing of demonstrators during the last year's protest sparked outrage. Now, social media users Jacinta Wanjiro turned those words against him in the wake of Ngondo's death. Onyango Jagirango, son of former Member of Parliament who served during the Jomo Kenyatta and Moi eras, offered a sombering reflection. Now, he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He said the late Ongondo had long faced allegations of abusive behavior and intimidation. I don't know what's your take on that. When the former IEBC chairperson died, debate sparked about his death. People were kind of celebrating his death. And now that Kasipul Member of Parliament has died, there have been, of course, we've heard from the Standard newspaper that people are actually not mourning his death, but the political class are. I don't know what's your take on the death of the political class that has been happening recently. People are celebrating their death instead of mourning their death. I don't know where are we at as a country. So alarming and unwanting. Moving on, unmet expectations on Labor Day. Now workers leave event with questions and empty pockets, but hold on the presidential directive of implementing 2024 minimum wage promise. Now that particular story, you can get it on page 2 of the Standard newspaper. Now, the Standard newspaper says no pay hike as Ruto directs 2024 minimum wage to be implemented. Now, no pay increase was offered in this year's Labor Day celebrations as President William Ruto directed the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection to ensure that 6% increment pronounced last year is implemented. Now, the President also directed Labor Cabinet Secretary, that is Alfred Mutua, to facilitate employees on contract to joint unions, citing it is unconstitutional, or rather it is a constitutional unions a right to the Central Organization of Trade Unions, that is COTU, claimed workers are being exploited by employees. Union membership in the labor market has always been associated with permanent and pensionable workers. Now, President William Ruto, who is the head of state, also said, who was the guest of honor, of course, in the celebrations held at Uhuru Gardens in Nairobi yesterday, also used the platform to underscore what he termed as milestone his administration has made in the sectors such as health, agriculture, affordable housing, and job creation. And lower inflation improved coffee prices, increased maize harvest, enabling shillings, augmented saving, and the forex reserve that has improved are some of the milestones that he associated with his administration, pronounced himself a well and request put of his, of course, administration. Of course, it is also there matters politics. President William Ruto steers clear the burning issues on job and insecurity. Of course, he was saying that in the Labor Day celebrations. Also in Labor Day celebrations, our employees are denying their workers permanent jobs. Of course, that was raised by COTU Secretary General, that is Francis Atwoli. There is a picture there of President William Ruto with COTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli and Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi at the 60th Labor Day celebrations at Uhuru Gardens yesterday. Of course, that is what's making headlines on the dailies today. I was having the Standard newspaper, the Daily Nation, and the Star newspaper. Now, on that note, it is exactly 12 minutes past the top of the hour. That note, we wrap up our bulletin, or rather our program here. You've been watching The Drift, and before we wrap up, just want to take some of your comments and the viewership here on our Facebook page at EBN TV. And I can see Kennedy Jumba Asirigwa saying is watching live on Facebook, and I can see Lauren Kelly also watching on Facebook, and Simon Odek saying he is watching, and of course, let me get that name again. Jeffrey Somba, Markley Achieng, Simon Peter Odek, Impesa Ken Kabedi, and of course, Chima. Of course, many thanks for your viewership and keeping me company here on The Drift this particular morning. My name is Martin Masharia. I'll be keeping tabs with these developing stories, including the murder probe of Charles Ongondo Were, murder probe, which is, of course, continuing to make headlines this particular week. Of course, we'll be keeping tabs with that, and we'll be bringing you that and much more in our subsequent bulletins later on in the day. My name is Martin Mashara. You've been watching The Drift. Let's do this again when God says we do.